Good afternoon and welcome to our discussion on equity and the reimagining of the federal workforce. My name is Bernadette with the Department of Economic Development Administration at the U.S. Department of Commerce. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. I'm just going to do a brief intro overview and we will get to the important stuff like talking to our panelists. So here we go. Equity is possibilities, the possibility of dreams. It is access to boundless opportunity and the space that exists without barriers to entry. It is the foundational infrastructure to an ecosystem whereby communities, all communities, are set on a path towards wealth creation, jobs, sustainable and healthy livelihoods, regardless of who you are, where you come from, your socioeconomic status, what you believe, and who you love. This administration understands the possibilities and the ecosystem that equity will create, and is the reason President Biden made it a core priority and taken subsequent bold actions to address inequity in communities across the country. It is central to our investment priorities, critical to how we shape policy, and a factor in the decisions to accelerating the economic recovery, job creation, and the country's global competitiveness. That is why today's conversation is so important, because as we begin to reimagine the federal workforce through the lens of equity, we hope to leverage your insights to develop the institutional infrastructure to initiate an ecosystem rooted in equity, or rather possibilities, driven across the country and globally through a reimagined and diverse federal workforce. So with that, I'd like to introduce Deputy Secretary Don Graves at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Currently, he serves as our co-chair at the department, leading Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, among other critical roles, such as leading one of the largest federal agencies responsible for helping accelerate the economic recovery, job creation, and the country's global competitiveness. Again, equity, possibilities. With that, Deputy Secretary Don Graves, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Bernadette, for that kind introduction. Thank you for your leadership at our department. Thank you for moderating today's discussion. I'd also like to thank and recognize Director Ahuja for your leadership in reinventing the federal workforce through the lens of equity. We know that it's especially hard right now for us to be thinking about the workforce, given the fact that we're still in this pandemic. And I know you have always prioritized equity. And Congresswoman Wilson, I am so grateful that you're joining us today. Thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, longstanding on this matter. It is so important. I also want to thank the panelists for joining today, joining the discussion. And you're going to hear more about why they're part of this discussion, because these are the experts. These are the folks who actually can help us reinvent the federal government, but do it through this, as Bernadette said, through this equity lens. We all know that Americans have hopes and they have dreams, but too often those hopes and dreams don't turn into a reality of lives of dignity. And our jobs in the federal government is to provide the opportunity for folks all across this country to take those dreams, those hopes, and make them a reality. And equity is at the core of delivering those opportunities, the possibilities, as Bernadette said. Equity has been at the core of everything that this administration has done. It's been a priority for the president and the vice president from day one. And equity means that every American should have access to the building blocks they need to be successful. When it comes to how we deliver government services, we know that our investments and our programs are often designed in ways that reach some Americans, but fail to reach a whole range of others. So this administration is committed to equity and delivering on that that promise so that everyone has that chance at the American dream, not just a privileged few. The president has signed 18 different executive orders since he took office related to equity, so that we can institutionalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility throughout the federal workforce. Just quickly, the Kellogg Foundation released a study a few years ago showing that the US economy could be $8 trillion larger by 2050 if we were able to eliminate racial disparities in health, education, incarceration, employment. That's money and human capital that could increase our competitiveness for decades to come. So it's not just good for our society or for our government, it's good for our economy. We also know that diversity challenges people to think differently, to be more innovative, and to perform better. McKinsey's found that the companies in the top quartile of diversity on their executive teams were able to outperform their peers by 25% more in terms of profitability. And executive teams that with more than 30% women, they're more likely to outperform teams with fewer or no women. So this is critically important for all sectors of our economy, all parts of our country. And we in the federal government are focusing on ways that we can take on this challenge internally. And the Commerce Department is taking new creative approaches to helping advance diverse leadership across industries, across the country. But we know that people is policy, that any issue you can think about, climate, technological innovation, infrastructure, investment, all those issues are dependent on policies that we develop here at the federal government, and tens of thousands of dedicated professionals who are leading our department's efforts and the efforts across the federal government are trying to meet the challenges of our time, but they need to represent the diverse cross-section of our economy and of our country. So to meet the urgent needs of our personnel commitments around equity across the department, we've developed a robust internal set of assessments to determine how we can build an agency that's more representative of the American people, that we can retain top talent, regardless of background or the experience, to make sure that we understand where we've fallen short and to better identify areas of opportunity to build on. Bernadette talked about the Diversity Council that I co-chair that's focused on these issues. We're also working on making sure that we have a diverse workforce, particularly in positions of senior level positions across the department, where we know a diversity of perspectives and experience is absolutely vital to making sure that our policies and programs are getting to every corner of the country. I know we'll have the chance to talk about a lot more of the specifics of what we're doing across the Commerce Department and across the administration. I just want to flag a couple other things, whether it comes to the American Rescue Plan or the bipartisan infrastructure law that the president was able to get passed just last year. We're focused on delivering for the American public and making sure that the policies that we make are representative of all of the diversity across our country. So as we're thinking about delivering on broadband to every family and every household in the country, as we think about the Economic Development Administration's support for the transformation that's going on across our country around economic development for the future, our teams are more diverse. They have a wider array of experiences, so that we can make sure that as we develop these policies, as we implement these programs, we aren't mistaken in missing some group, some way to deliver for the American public. So together, we believe that we can work hand in hand to ensure that the federal government is the national model for an equitable workforce. So I will hush up. I've gone on too long, and thank you so much. And I turn it back to you, Bernadette.
Well, thank you. So on that note, Deputy Secretary Graves, thinking about commerce in this context, how are you in your role building diversity, equity, and inclusion principles into the recruiting and hiring?
Well, part of what we've done is for the very first time, we are soon to welcome our very first Chief Diversity Officer for the Department of Commerce. And it was critically important that that person be at the senior executive service level because we wanted to have someone who was empowered to work with every bureau, all of our 13 different bureaus across the department, and with us in the central offices to make sure that diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility were core to everything that we were doing. As I said, we're also developing a wide array of new programs across the federal government, across the Department of Commerce. And what we've done is to make sure that that in all of those programs, we are connecting with a wider array of stakeholders and communities. We're also making sure that there are opportunities for folks to come into the government to implement these programs. So we have new hiring authorities. We're bringing in new folks. If you're interested in coming to work for the Department of Commerce, now is the time to do it because we're looking for any of you from any background to come in. We also know that part of delivering for the American public is making sure that our programs are connecting to folks and communities who hadn't been connected in the past. So many of our bureaus are actually doing outreach in tribal communities, in communities of color, with a range of organizations, so that we make sure that our programs are reflective of the challenges that folks are facing, that we're also increasing the number of folks who are in a pipeline for these programs. So just as, for instance, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, here at the department, which includes the National Weather Service, they just have given $60 million in grants to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, to make sure that HBCUs have the resources, have paid internships, have opportunities for folks that often don't think about jobs in places like NOAA, that they have opportunities and pathways into our department. So we're doing that across all of our bureaus to make sure that we're getting to a range of folks that we would have missed otherwise.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Graves. That was fantastic, and we look forward to welcoming that new diversity officer to the department. So with that, I would like to quickly introduce Director Kiran Ahuja, the Director at the Office of Personnel and Management. She is a star in and of itself. We are very excited to have her over at OPM. She is also, as we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, she is also the first South Asian American and first Asian American woman to lead OPM. Again, thinking through the idea of equity, the idea of possibilities, these things are happening. In the capacity there at OPM, her role is to recruit, retain, and honor the American workforce that's actually landing rovers on Mars, fighting climate change and cancer, and building the country back better. So Director, I turn it over to you. And I'm also going to give you your questions so we can transition right into that. So question for you, OPM has recently published a number of hiring authorities designed to help post-secondary students and recent college graduates enter federal careers. Would you be able to share some details with respect to those authorities?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Bernadette. And it's good to be here. I was noticing on the participant list, we've got 370 of our closest family and friends who are interested in talking about these issues, which is so incredible to see this level of participation. And of course, it's such a hard act to follow, Deputy Secretary Don Graves, but I will do my best because he is so passionate about these issues. And I know, again, I precede some wonderful speakers. So I just want to say a few things, Bernadette. First, I know the Office of Personnel Management may not be like the agency that you know about, but we are the HR leader in the federal government. We focus on making sure that agencies like Department of Commerce and others can bring in the best and brightest individuals into the federal government. And like Deputy Secretary Graves mentioned, there are so many opportunities right now, some unbelievable opportunities that we're going to talk about today. And a part of that, and particularly in this administration, and I can't believe Deputy Secretary Graves counted the number of executive orders I didn't know myself that are focused on equity and diversity, is that absolutely in this effort, we are committed to bringing, as a part of that best and brightest, making sure that our workforce, draws on the amazing diversity that exists across this country. We know that that is our strength. We know that it helps us be a better federal government, better public servants, and that is so high on our list as we think about all these efforts. And I'll mention in a couple of minutes about these hiring authorities. Before I do that, I just want to say, listen, I'm going to be biased here. I think federal government, we win on mission. We win on the incredible work that is happening across this government every single day. Just think the bipartisan infrastructure law that Deputy Secretary Graves just talked about. I mean, this is, what Department of Commerce is doing, which is like expanding broadband across this entire country in places that have not had the ability to be connected, have been very challenged in this moment that we're in the state of the pandemic, when we have seen who has access and who doesn't. We're talking about combating climate change. We're talking about capping orphan wells. We're talking about building bridges, basic infrastructure, all the way to how we think about the new age that we're going into around renewable energy. It's really exciting stuff. And so, a part of doing that is making sure that not only that we're bringing the best and brightest at whatever levels, that we're committed to diversity, but that we're bringing in early career talent. We want to make sure that we're bringing in these new set of skills, the savviness that we know that comes with early career talent, the diversity that they reflect. And so these two hiring authorities, Bernadette, both of them really, one is focused on post-secondary students who are in school and can actually work and go to school. And we know nowadays, like the sense that you are just going to school, full-time is not the state of affairs. We know that most students out there are working, they're supporting themselves or they're supporting families. And the second hiring authority that we've created is a pipeline of bringing in recent graduates. This is technical stuff, hiring authorities. Basically, these are avenues, a little bit of an easier avenue to come into the federal government. We're encouraging agencies to use it, like our friends at Department of Commerce, to really bring in early career talent. And I'll tell you, what's really interesting as we talk about how the federal government needs to be competitive is that we're paying attention to not only how we're a model employer, but how we are making sure that every federal job is a good paying job. So these two hiring authorities or vehicles allow someone, a student or a recent grad, to make up to $72,000 a year. So you could be making $72,000 a year while you're in school. You can be making this salary when you're coming into the federal government, and you're on a pipeline or basically a pathway into becoming a permanent federal employee. So it's just a really incredible opportunity, Bernadette, in addition to other programs that we have that I'd be happy to talk about in a few minutes. And I'll just mention, as I just close out initially, is that this is deeply personal for me. I am a daughter of immigrants to this country. This was a country that, certainly opened up its arms, but I also had just challenges growing up in Savannah, Georgia, being an Indian immigrant. And I saw how much I wanted to participate in the life and fabric of this country. And the way I did it was coming into the federal government. My first job after college was coming in to work for a member of Congress in Georgia. And then after law school, coming to work for the Department of Justice. And they have been such unbelievable experiences. And I'm back. I keep coming back. So anyway, look forward to the rest of the conversation, Bernadette, and thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Director. Again, I think the key thing that continuously resonates just in the discussion here is this idea of possibilities and the door and the opportunity that this conversation on equity will create. So thank you, Director. I would like to now move over to Representative Frederica Wilson out of the 24th District of Florida. The Congresswoman is part of one of the most culturally and ethnically diverse districts in the nation, which includes Miami-Dade, part of Northwest Miami-Dade and Broward counties. Throughout her career, she has been a voice for the voiceless and has made it her personal mission to improve the quality of life for her community by creating jobs, improving education, ensuring that home foreclosures are not a thing. Among others, she's also a member of the Education and Workforce Subcommittee, where she introduced the American Jobs Act of 2013 that promotes full employment and boosts workforce development. So Congresswoman, welcome. And I'm also going to ask you your question as well. How can leaders and federal agencies support equitable access to opportunities and make an effective call to public service?
Well, thank you so much, Bernadette, for the question. First of all, it's a pleasure being here with all of you today. And I want to applaud President Biden for his unwavering commitment to equity and for leading by example through his executive order on advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, which is such an important step towards ensuring that the federal government reflects the diversity of our nation. Changes to recruitment and employment practices are absolutely necessary. I'm especially pleased that President Biden's executive order charges federal agencies with developing new recruitment partnerships, specifically with historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and other minority-serving institutions. Many students who may be interested in government employment and are eager to work in public service find the process of applying for jobs at federal agencies both daunting and confusing. We know that students of color borrow more on average to go to college and have a harder time repaying student loans. As a result, oftentimes a career in public service can seem inaccessible. So partnerships with HBCUs, TCUs, and MSIs can help improve understanding about government careers and benefits like the public service loan forgiveness. These institutions boast tremendous untapped potential, and our entire country would stand to benefit from shoring up the pipeline leading from minority-serving institutions to the government sector. Engagement between agencies and local leaders will also be key. In addition to serving in Congress, I'm also a former principal, school board member, founder of the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence program, which is a dropout prevention and mentoring program geared towards improving the life and educational outcomes of young men in color. And we have sent thousands of young boys to college. I have deep ties in my community and many diverse stakeholders. So by working with federal, state, and local representatives, as well as other community leaders, federal agencies can streamline the flow of information to communities that are underrepresented in the federal workforce to help, I guess you would call it, demystify government work. Additionally, we must ensure that opportunities are accessible for individuals from differing socioeconomic statuses, specifically from low-income backgrounds. That is why I put in place something called the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. It's a commission within the United States Commission on Civil Rights, which is so important. This Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys is comprised of 6 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, esteemed experts from across the country that span the field of education, healthcare, criminal justice, and more. So as we work, we will urge the commission to sensitize the nation about the systemic inequities of Black males, to assist President Biden and help him recruit and retain diverse professionals for the federal workforce. Further, we must continue efforts to close achievement gaps and barriers to opportunity with programs like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, which is so important because in its current form, it's failing, it's complex. But the current education department has taken important steps to address these challenges. I serve as chair of the House Education and Workforce Investment Subcommittee, and I've advocated for restoring confidence in this program and better incentivizing public service by offering relief after every year of qualifying service rather than all or nothing benefit after 10 years. So ultimately, by ensuring equitable access to information for all people, specifically to students prior to entering the workforce and working diligently to create space that is inclusive and diverse and is reflective of the United States, leaders and federal agencies can go beyond supporting equitable opportunity and serve as the model employer. Thank you for inviting me today. And I'm so proud of Roosevelt. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Wilson. I think we are all proud of Roosevelt. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Janet Murguia, President and CEO of Unidos. It is my pleasure to introduce Janet. She is the President and CEO of Unidos US, one of the nation's largest Latino civil rights and advocacy organizations. There, she works to amplify the Latino voice on issues affecting the community, such as education, healthcare, immigration, civil rights, and the economy. She is a fierce and relentless advocate for this community and has been a critical and leading voice on all things Latino representation through her work with the Proyecto 20% and the efforts to ensure Latino representation. So Janet, welcome, and let me go ahead and ask you your question as well. How can community partners and federal agencies work together to remove barriers and make the application and hiring process more equitable?
Thanks, Bernadette. It's wonderful to see you in this role at Commerce. And let me also thank Deputy Secretary Graves and Director Ahuja. Obviously, what an honor it is to be part of this distinguished panel and to follow the Congresswoman and her tremendous leadership. So look, I think there's a couple of key points, and I'll try to be very brief, but the collaboration with community-based organizations is so key. We truly believe there's great value and impact when federal agencies leverage those partnerships with local community-based organizations and schools. And I know we're going to hear from a very distinguished university leader here to serve those underrepresented and underserved communities of color. And one of the key reasons is because proximity matters, it builds trust. And right now, there's a lot of folks out there who don't know how to access truthful and accurate information. So those trusted partners become really key. The community-based organizations have great insight and expertise, cultural competencies and language that really equip individuals in their communities with the information and the tools needed to access jobs and adapt expertise and skills to fill many of those federal job opportunities. So there is a rare and unique moment here where we can connect resources to those community-based organizations, many through national intermediaries like Unidos US. In the African American community, we work in partnership with the National Urban League, with NAACP, with NAN, and a number of other groups, with the NCAI and the Native American community. Those national intermediaries are there. We have some great affiliates in South Florida. The Congresswoman may know about Hispanic Unity of Florida, Connect Familias, the Mexican American Council. In North Carolina, affiliates like East Coast Migrant Head Start, El Centro Hispano, El Pueblo. These are organizations that really can provide important information about these types of opportunities, but also programs that have been developed to support that skill building and access to education. And I really would be remiss if I didn't build on the Congresswoman's comments. Hey, we can do all these programs, but at the end of the day, policies and investments matter. And we need to absolutely double down on investing in education policies that we know are going to open the door for more students of color to enter into college. Addressing that debt issue is extremely important, but even more so, once we get them enrolled, we have to make sure that these students complete college. We're seeing too many fall off even while they start 1 or 2 years in. In college enrollment, for example, in 2019, there were 16 million students enrolled in post-secondary education institutions, of which only 3.4 million were Latino and 2.1 million were Black. When it comes to college completion, many still remain distressingly low, with just over half of Latinos and only 40% of Black students graduating. That's unacceptable. And I think it's just a really important point to be made, because until and unless we address those important real outcomes, we're not going to get all of the inclusion and the pipeline that we want. I would just say, in the same vein that we've included HBCUs, there are HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions, and those institutions that serve disproportionately higher rates of Latino and Latina graduates. We need to tap into those pipelines and make sure that we're engaging them directly. I will say, when it comes to the USAjobs.gov program, there are still some gaps that could be addressed. And what we have found is that there are algorithms in the way that they're worded that exclude applicants if certain keywords aren't included in the submission. We've really got to address that situation if we're going to fully leverage opportunities. And I do think when it comes to post-secondary educational requirements, which disproportionately exclude low-income communities of color, we need to really think about related skill building. Are there employment opportunities that do not require post-secondary education degree, or that could be combined with education and certifications? I just think we're going to have to really lean into all of these options. I think I would just say that for us, Bernadette, you mentioned it at the top. We at UNILS US led an effort to really look at a model for how we could collect a database of potential appointees, of qualified pipeline, if you will, for some of the political appointments in the Biden administration. I think there are templates and models that could be applied even once beyond the political appointment process into the government hiring process, and sharing that information with organizations like ours. Finally, I'll just say this. UNILS US has developed a portfolio of workforce development programs that really do and can serve as pipelines into different sectors. We've done it in the finance sector, in the automotive sector, food and beverage, and sales sectors. I think that there are ways, and what we've adopted in our programs are soft skills and hard skills for particular jobs, engagement of employers in the implementation of the project, a referral system, integration of digital services and supportive services to applicants by community leaders who know their needs culturally and linguistically. Happy to share more, but these are just some of the reasons why leading into national intermediaries and community-based organizations in partnership with educational institutions is really key for us to address this diversity and inclusion of hiring in the government.
Thank you, Janet. That was great. And I think just listening to what points Janet has raised, I think that these are all critical elements to the importance of the question that was asked. Really, how can community partners really be that additional trusted voice, that trusted advisor to lift up and support this idea of equity and the possibilities that could be created with a federal workforce that looks like America. So thank you, Janet. I'm going to turn over to Mia Ives Rubley. She is the Director of Disability Justice over at the Center for American Progress. In this capacity, she has previously advocated for disability justice and inclusion at nonprofits across the US. And she has also founded the Women's March Disability Caucus. So Mia, welcome. And I'm also going to ask your question. What are the recruitment best practices specific to your community? What have you seen work well in the past or current learnings? And how can we encourage and support federal jobs and hiring in your community and beyond? So
Yeah, that's a
welcome,
great
Mia.
question, or great several questions. Super glad to be on here chatting with you all about the issues within my community. As you can probably see, I am a disabled woman of color and am an individual that has not only experienced the problems with trying to find employment as a disabled person and as a disabled person of color, but also dealt with it in professional settings because I was a vocational rehabilitation counselor for 6 years within the state of North Carolina. So I've dealt with a lot of the issues and nuances around the problems that disabled people face when trying to obtain employment. Now, I want to lay out a couple of statistics for you all. 1 in 4 individuals in the United States today has a disability. Now, this is before the pandemic, so we assume that that number is actually outdated now. This is a CDC number, so it's saying 25% of the population has a disability, and it's one of the least employed communities in the country. And so that means that we're leaving out a huge proportion of the population out of the workforce right now due to ableism and other structural barriers that are keeping individuals out of work. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we are coming up on 2 years of a major pandemic that has been a major disabling event. It means that we are seeing up to 30% of the individuals who have had COVID having long COVID, meaning that our population is growing. We know that the unemployment rate, although it has gotten better, both for non-disabled and disabled alike, the schism or the difference between disabled and non-disabled still remains extremely wide and hasn't been changed at all during this pandemic or during the economic recovery that we continue to push for. It also, we saw through the most recent Household Pulse survey data that 8.7 million people from late December to early January were out of work because of either having COVID symptoms or caring for somebody that had COVID symptoms. So all of this to say is that being able to get a job with a disability has been hard in the past. We are now seeing a larger proportion of individuals with disabilities, which makes it even more important for us to be utilizing disability forward policies to ensure that disabled people are able to get jobs, able to support themselves, or able to get the resources they need if they cannot get a job. So what does that actually mean? So there's a couple of different examples. The federal government is the biggest employer of disabled people, which is great. It means that they are leading the way. Much of that work stemmed from some of the work that the previous President Obama had done. And that's we've made great strides. I know that also President Biden has also made efforts into this sphere, particularly with a couple of executive orders and administrative changes that includes considering long COVID as a disability, which means that those individuals can get accommodations. And that's going to be extremely important for government agencies to understand what those accommodations could look like and ensuring that they establish them within their organizations at an even rate, making sure that, women, people of color are also getting the same amount of accommodations as everybody else. Also, there was a proposed rule to prohibit the payment of sub-minimum wages under 14C certifications as a qualification for participation as a nonprofit agency under the Davis Wagner O'Day program. That's great. We need to make sure that our wages are we're paying wages that people can live on. So that's going to be extremely important. We know that disabled people, their living expenses are actually 2 to 3 times more expensive than a non-disabled person. When you're talking about somebody living in somewhere like New York or DC, particularly DC for the federal workforce, those individuals are dealing with extra costs of living in a specific environment, and understanding that we need to make sure that they're paid enough to be able to live on while working for the federal government. Lastly, I want to address two other small categories. One is Schedule A. Schedule A is one of the biggest sort of programs out there to try to streamline disabled people into positions that are open. It helps individuals who often have other barriers to entry. They might not have the same connections as somebody without a disability in order to get a job in the federal government. They may not have been able to do an internship like their colleague because of a disability or because they're on SSI or SSDI, right? So what the problem with that program is that we have things like selective placement program coordinators, and we have all of these mechanisms, but it's not very well known, right? You have to dig within the website to try and find out this information. It's sort of like a treasure hunt for individuals. Even me as an individual who has worked for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, when I was trying to apply to the federal government, that was difficult for me as an individual who is very well versed in this work. So I can't imagine for somebody, maybe somebody who is extremely new, just graduated from college, if they are trying to look at this program, they may have a lot of difficulty. My second thing is vocational rehabilitation, which is a great tool for individuals with disabilities to be able to find any type of employment, including federal employment. Unfortunately, there's not a very good tie-in or connection between voc rehab and the federal government in terms of employment. We literally have, millions of people in these programs in each state. And these individuals have been strictly vetted by each counselor. These counselors are doing skills assessments. They're looking at medical records. They're looking at employment records. They're helping these individuals gain the skills that they need to be employed. But the problem is that there's no tracking to be able to get those individuals into some of these amazing jobs within the federal government. So there needs to be a better coordination between vocational rehabilitation and the federal government and employment. And I will do one last thing, and I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but the last thing is looking at statistics. So a lot of our programs have been based, unfortunately, on white, disabled, middle-class individuals, because that is how our statistics are taken. Right now, we have a form. It was, I believe, recently updated about 5 years ago. The form is called SF-256, and it allows individuals to voluntarily state if they have a disability. The problem is that you cannot connect that data with racial or gender data. And so we do not know how many Black and brown individuals with disabilities we're hiring. We don't know how many Asian Americans with disabilities that we're hiring. So the problem is that many of our programs are outreaching to white families that are middle class, and we're not looking at the diversity within the intersection, which is doing a real disservice because we know Black and Brown and Indigenous individuals are more likely to have disabilities. So it's extremely important that we make adjustments to SF 256. I know the difficulties. I worked at EEOC. I know it's difficult to change forms, but I think it is appropriate because you can't cross-tabulate this form with the other demographic information forms. Because we can't do that, it means that we're missing out on key data points that could really help us employ individuals that are extremely talented.
Yeah, thank you. I think that you have raised some very important points with respect to this form. And I think that we're all definitely taking note of this. So thank you. And I just want to do a quick time check. We're getting close to our five o'clock stop. And I know some of us have very hard stops. So I just want to make sure we kind of keep us moving towards a really sharp response here. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Smith-Jackson at the University of North Carolina A&T. There, she's been a research engineer with an extensive academic background, including previously program director at NSF. Dr. Smith-Jackson, I'm going to go ahead and also ask you your question. What does a successful pipeline look like to you? What are the recruitment best practices specific to your students? And what challenges exist for HBCU students seeking to enter federal government?
All right, thank you, Bernadette, for the question. And thank you for inviting North Carolina A&T State University to this conversation. Yes, I will try to stick to my time. So one of the things I wanted to start with, though, is about the linguistic framing. These are pathways, and what we're talking about is building pathways between for students between the institutions and the federal agencies to make sure that students have from HBCUs have the same access, equitable access to these particular jobs. So I like to think of building a pathway as a co-designing partnership. When federal agencies co-design with HBCUs, we get a much better outcome. And really, corporate and industry are doing a much better job of co-designing with HBCUs, coming to our partnership coordination groups, and they're called different things at different HBCUs, but they come to us and they first want to build a relationship, and they build a program together with us that works for our students. Unfortunately, there are still some corporations and federal agencies who use models that worked at predominantly white institutions, and they believe those will generalize to HBCUs, and they do not. So I want to bring that out. Co-designing is very important. Now, also, Janet had mentioned community partnerships. One thing to remember about HBCUs is we are anchor institutions in our communities. And so we have strong partnerships. A&T is designated as an Association of Public and Land Grant Universities Innovation and Economic Prosperity institution. We're also a Carnegie Community Engaged institution. We have that designation. But the point is, we're a solid rock within our communities. So those partnerships not only help you to recruit students in federal government jobs, but also other individuals in the communities, because we build workforce partnerships with community organizations. And then I'll just go on to say that there are a number of reports that Congress has issued task orders for National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Mathematics. And though there are many reports that are targeting best practices for how you diversify your workforce in federal agencies, and even how you work with HBCUs, HSIs, TCUs, et cetera. And so I just want people to read those reports. If you really want to do, the work has already been done. A recent cybersecurity report for the Federal Aviation Administration, goodness, we outlined in that report best practices for working with HBCUs, HSIs, et cetera, if you want to encourage people to come into federal government. And then I'll basically end with some of the challenges that students have. I do want to go back to Janet's point, which is a great point. There's algorithmic bias. And this software that is being used is systemically disrupting our society, because the people who create the algorithms are people who also have biases, or they are less capable of understanding differential impacts in mathematical models. So that has to be visited. Also hiring practices and making sure that these positions are known, they are advertised outside of simple traditional ways in which the federal government has advertised, and making sure that we're coming into the communities to talk to students and coming to HBCUs. So hiring managers should have already visited HBCUs. They should make that a routine practice and have already built up relationships. And those are key performance indicators that the federal government needs to start talking about when they are trying to make sure that they're modernizing hiring offices, hiring managers, and human resources. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Dr. I have to apologize briefly. Deputy Secretary Graves does have to exit our very important conversation. So, sir, would you like to say a quick word before you have to exit? And again, we apologize.
Yeah, thanks, Bernadette. Many apologies to everyone. This has been a fantastic conversation. The ideas, the suggestions that you've made are things that we are absolutely going to work on. I know that Director Ahuja and I and the teams will be meeting to distill all these ideas, and any ideas that folks that are listening want to send in. But I can't thank our panelists enough for participating, and many apologies that I have to run to another meeting. So thank you so much for everything.
No problem, sir. We will definitely circle back on this important conversation. I'm going to go ahead and finish out our program and turn to Deontay Barnes, who is a recent North Carolina A&T graduate. So Deontay, I'm going to ask you your question. Again, I want us to be really mindful of time. As a recent graduate, what is your perception of working in government? Do you have ideas for how to strengthen the reputation of federal careers among students?
Yes, and I too like to thank you guys for having me here. I kind of echo a lot of things that Dr. Smith-Jackson said. I think kind of the biggest thing is, in government, I personally feel like you don't really know who's there. Are you going to see someone that's like you? And so I think the biggest thing is, if you're going to be recruiting, especially on campuses, HBCUs, HSIs, et cetera, is being present and intentional. On campus, basically, if you are not seen, you're not known. And so, some of the things that you can do there is different types of engagement and outreach activities to include interest luncheons, dinners. I've been to, on campus, a few different types of business and technical workshops, projects, and even ongoing research opportunities, if that is something that's available. And then a lot of students are also interested in higher education. So if there's programs out there for, scholarships for masters, even at bachelor's level, with masters and PhD programs, loan repayment opportunities, things like that, I think are always good. I know for my journey, it was kind of untraditional just because I was in school and I went into the military, and I did that for about 10 years. So I understand the importance of diversity and how that impacted our mission within the military. And I've seen it inside of different organizations. And so, I had an opportunity to be at IBM, who was very intentional about their presence on campus. They did different types of events. We had bowling nights, dinners, etiquette types of things, different types of panel discussions about technology or just your career progression. And so when you are building those things, we kind of learn on campus about fostering relationships and experiences. But if you're doing those things and you're seeing these types of people on campus, more often than none, those are going to be the people that you look for your future employment. And so that's exactly what I did. I had an opportunity to go out to IBM, where they bust out, I think, 50 to 60 of us to come to their campus, spend a day out, do a few different types of workshops, meet people, and see what the business is like. And so that was a relationship that, really made me happy to see people that looks like me at the workforce. And that's kind of why I went into that direction. But on the other hand, I'm currently at Sandia National Labs, and there's a huge presence of A&T people here. And so knowing that also, let me know that, this company is, or this organization is that is important to have diversity. And since I see a bunch of us, that also, gives me the idea that that's a place where I wanted to go. And they also are on campus, and they have, a pipeline that's set up with one of the professors there. So they do different types of technical workshops. I graduated computer science. So seeing those types of things and being able to be a part of those things, definitely influences your decision towards going into the federal workforce.
Thank you, Deontay. I really appreciate that. I'm going to hand it over to Bishop Burns, who's Director of Economic Development of the Church of God in Christ. Bishop Burns, I wanted to just go ahead and go straight into your question. How can community partners and agencies work together to support making, sorry, hold on one second. Yep, can support making the government the model employer?
Thank you so much. And I'm representing Bishop J.G. Sheard, our presiding bishop. And thank you, Secretary Graves. I know he had to leave, and Director Ahuja. One of the things I thought about when this question was asked is that I look at us in faith-based groups as community ambassadors for the Department of Commerce. And we have an opportunity. For the example, our organization is 8+ million strong in 100 countries around the world. And we have an opportunity to bring awareness to the opportunity to the underserved communities. At the same time, we understand that many people maybe don't have all the tools they need at the time that they're ready to apply. And we can provide those tools. It could be as simple as making sure they've got the computers and all the other soft skills and hard skills and job training. And so we've got churches around the country, faith-based groups, and even I would even extend it to the nonprofit world that we partner with a lot of. There are just so many things available. And because we're in the underserved areas, if the information is given to us and we're provided the resources and actually the connectivity with the Department of Commerce, we can make a lot of things happen. The last piece I'll say is that we also understand when people or individuals are coming for the first time, and some of them, they're a little bit fearful, they have other challenges in their life. And Ms. Janet brought up a very good point about the fall off. And it's not only, I agree with that with the academia piece, but also when they begin a job, there could be fall off. So we look upon it as being a partner with them in the whole journey. So when they start the journey, whether it be starting in college and in an internship or starting a job, we have the ability to help them in the journey. It could be something as simple as a child care need. It could be something as simple as a family issue. And these are the things that they just need to know, that there's a support structure to undergird their success. And so I look at the nonprofit space, I look at the faith-based space as being not only a conduit with the government for identifying opportunities, but also an opportunity to serve and support the success of all the employees that are coming forth. And I just want to say to everybody, this is an outstanding panel. And I am hoping after today that I'm able to connect with all of you. And Ms. Mia, I understand disabilities. I must say, I'm a mechanical engineer. Both of my degrees are in engineering, but how I did that with dyslexia, I still don't know. It's been a challenge and it's very difficult to deal with. I still deal with it, but I understand. And those are the things that we are here to serve. So thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you, Bishop Burns. I know we are very out of time, but I did want to give an opportunity to Director Ahuja and Congresswoman Wilson to close us out and have any parting words. I think that this was an amazing discussion. There are so many things on the table here, and I think the things that I'm going to take away, and I believe many of you will as well, is one, the importance of community partners like Unidos. The word trusted advisor just really resonates. It's a term that's also used in economic development when we're engaging communities. Communities are driving the needs for us as a government to respond. So it is my fervent hope that we can take on that next challenge. So Dr. Ahuja, Congresswoman.
Yes, I'll just jump in really quickly and just say a really big thank you to everyone. I think You know, an hour does not do justice. Each of these speakers could probably hold court for, for the full hour and share so much knowledge. And so absolutely, Bernadette, I think we should definitely chat about how to reconvene this group and definitely give some time to the conversation and definitely you know, get questions from the audience. I do want to just, you know, in some ways just quickly respond to some of the thoughts that were shared that I think are so incredibly important. You know, one thing that I didn't mention at the outset, which I do think is important, and we're very excited and very honored to have this role, is that the Office of Personnel Management actually has a leadership role in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Executive Order that President Biden issued in January. I know there was some reference to these strategic plans that that each of the agencies are responsible in creating, which are due in just very short order at the end of March. All the things that you all have talked about, from recruitment, partnerships, even more so around pay equity, around a pathway for formerly incarcerated individuals, paid internships. All of those things are both things that we're working on inside the agency from a policy perspective, but what we're asking of agencies on what is going to be their plan going forward on how to really implement those and to track them through metrics. We're creating ways across government to track those metrics so that we really have a base point of where we are and where we need to go. I'm always like, you know, worry about when we talk about strategic plans in government and things that are on paper and what does that really mean. And so I think it's all of us collectively holding ourselves accountable, all of you, all of us inside of government. I think what's going to be important, and since we have the Congresswoman here, agency budgets, you know, oftentimes things related to partnerships and recruitment and internships and professional development go to the wayside when agencies are trying to manage their budgets. And I think that's both something we're going to emphasize inside government, but certainly we need our congressional partners to ask those questions. We need the community organizations and universities to say, are these part of agency budgets? Because that is, you know, they're going to need your support in that way as well, so we can do this collectively. So I just want to say I'm really appreciative. We've taken a ton of notes and look forward to the conversations going forward. And you have our commitment to be a resource and to be a connector and to really to do this together. So thank you everyone for being a part of this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ahuja. Congresswoman, would you like to have the last word before we close out?
The last word, drop the mic. You know, as I've served in Congress and other elected offices, buzzwords and buzz slogans always occur, and they find themselves in the conversations in barbershops and beauty salons and in Congress and in all of our agencies and of course in our workforce. And we just happen to be living in a time where those buzzwords are diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And those are buzzwords that are long overdue. And hopefully within the agencies in our federal government and all over these United States, these will become permanent buzzwords, and not just buzzwords, but permanent action items. Because at this time in our nation, when our democracy is hanging by a thread, we have to make sure that we include all Americans and make a space for each and every one of them, because these are very perilous times. So thank you so much for inviting me. And I appreciate this opportunity for sharing. I appreciate all of the speakers. I've learned so much, and this has been a great day in America.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you to our esteemed panelists. We all greatly appreciate the conversation and look forward to next steps and follow-up. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Mhm.